Hey gamers, welcome to How to Beat the Witch Doctor in Spelunky 2. The first thing you might notice about the Witch Doctor is the spirit skull floating in a circle around the Doctor. I'm here to tell you that it really isn't as scary as you think, sort of. The skull has an aggro range of about 4 blocks. What this means is the skull will begin to chase you once you enter its range, which can be a little scary. Luckily, the skull will stop following you once you are about 4 blocks away from it. Notice how I jump back and forth here to get into and out of the aggro range. This space is just enough for you to be out of the range. There are 2 things that make the skull threatening. The first is that as long as you are within 4 blocks of it, it will continue to chase you. Again, you only need to be 4 blocks away from it for it to leave you alone, so as long as you can backtrack to a safe location, this shouldn't be much of an issue. The other thing that makes the skull scary is what happens if you get hit by it. When hit by the skull, you'll drop down to 1 heart by a status called Curse. This curse can be inflicted in a few different ways, but the skull is probably the easiest way to get it. Note that if you're at 1 heart already, the skull will just kill you. Being cursed really sucks, so try to avoid that. The skull cannot be harmed as far as I'm aware. Also, when you get hit by a skull, the Witch Doctor takes about 10 seconds to make another skull, so even if you do get hit by the skull, dealing with the Witch Doctor becomes a lot easier. The next part of the Witch Doctor is the Witch Doctor itself. It walks back and forth like a caveman, avoiding dropping off ledges at all costs. While a caveman might drop off a block once he sees you, the Witch Doctor really hates falling. Instead of rushing towards you without a thought in his mind, the Witch Doctor begins chanting at you. You'll notice this because the Witch Doctor A stops walking and starts talking, and B, you'll get a cute little skull over your head. The aggro range for this is roughly 6 blocks and only starts when you're on the same level as the Witch Doctor. If you're even a block above or below, they won't be able to see you and you'll be safe from the chant. After 1 or 2 seconds, the chant will be complete and you'll go flying back, having incurred 1 damage from the attack. Unlike the skull, this attack does not curse you. While the Witch Doctor is chanting, he stops moving, which means you're free to run in and whip him if you have the space. The scary part about the chant is that it doesn't have an end range. Once he begins chanting, the only way to avoid damage is to knock him out or kill him. Killing the Witch Doctor might seem difficult thanks to the chanting and the homing skull, but it really isn't that difficult. For starters, the skull can't reach you in time if you just run up and whip, so as long as it isn't on the same side you're coming from, you'll be fine. Note here how the skull wasn't even completely opposite me, and I'm still able to reach the Doctor before the skull can reach me. Like most enemies, you can always throw things at Witch Doctors to stun them. Part of the thing that makes Witch Doctors much less scary than they could be is their placement in the game. The jungle is rife with enemies you can throw, as well as weapons like the boomerang. Stunning the Witch Doctor makes the skull disappear, which means a stunned Doctor poses no threat until they wake up. Right here is a common situation where you might find a Witch Doctor or any other enemy. All you need to do is whip while you're dropping down. The whip stays out for a little bit, so you can time your attack for anywhere from 1 to 2 blocks above the enemy and it'll hit them. Since you fall so fast, you really aren't in danger of getting hit by the skull as long as it isn't directly in your fall path. If you aren't confident in your ability to whip while falling, or there's some other reason you don't want to drop down like that, you can always just climb down and whip like this. The skull is still pretty slow, so as long as you keep moving, it can't hurt you. Notice how I'm simply climbing and the skull isn't fast enough to gain on me. Here's another common situation you might find yourself in. Witch Doctor is below you, and there might not be as much room as you'd like to whip him. Well, like other human enemies, you can jump on his head. Notice how the skull was very close to me, yet I still hit the Witch Doctor first. This is a very close call, and I don't recommend getting that close, but this clip shows that the skull is not as threatening as it might seem. Here's a difficult spot to be in. Witch Doctor standing right in your path, and you only have 1 way to go. You can drop past him, but you might risk getting chanted since he's looking at your only way out. If you stand out of the skull's aggro range, you can survey your surroundings. Notice the trees at the bottom of the screen? That means we're safe to do a drop whip. In this case, I keep holding left and landed on top of the tree right in the middle. Even if there weren't branches there, I would have been able to grab the tree or a ledge by just holding left. Alternatively, I could have grabbed the vine and whipped him like before. If I waited for the skull to move properly, there's even enough room for me to jump on his head. Here's another instance of a Witch Doctor being below you. For this one, we can see that there's a bear trap on the left tree. Best not to stand up there, just in case. From this angle, the best course of action would be to jump right on his head, since we can't really get a good look at what's below us and a drop whip might be too dangerous. As always, if the skull aggroes to you, you can just run back the way you came and you should be okay. Here I do a sort of drop whip, where I start the whip about a block above where the doctor is and grab the ledge. Again, this maneuver is a little riskier than just jumping on his head, so I don't suggest newcomers try this one out immediately. Those are the scariest instances of witch doctor positioning as far as I could tell. Even in most of these situations, you can hit them with a body, a rock, a trap, or a weapon, and it would work out as well or better than the tactics I showed here. Hopefully this helps any jungle goers out there.